Hello Wargamers, today we are continuing our discussion about differences between this guy, the 6th edition Tau Codex, and the slightly photoshopped version, the 7th edition Tau Codex. And today we're talking about elite choices. Wrong codex. So let's get to it. Before, you used to have, when the Tau Codex first came out, all you really had was crisis suits and stealth teams. Then they really shook things up last time around by introducing the Riptide. It's like, oh man, what am I going to do? I have 3 choices now. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. And now this time they introduce another monstrous creature, the ghostkeel. And so you have more options now, as well as the option to take crisis bodyguards as their own distinct thing, independent of a commander. So that's something that we talked about in the HQ unit video, and can talk a little bit about it right now too, is crisis bodyguards are now an elite choice. They are no longer just kind of a non-FOC unit that you got when you took a commander. Now they're their own thing, and independent of commander. So there's pluses and minuses there, but yeah, so we'll get to that in a minute. But let's start off with stealth battle suits. Largely the same as they were before, but one thing about stealth battle suits now is they are part of a really cool formation with ghostkeels, and so while you probably didn't take stealth teams in the past, you might consider taking them now as part of that formation. What is it called again? Like guys, I had this at the tip of my tongue a minute ago. They are part of the Optimized Stealth Cadre. Yes. And that's a pretty cool formation, and so you might want to consider taking them in that. But otherwise, really not anything has changed for them. Depending on how you field that Optimized Stealth Cadre, you might want to be put more emphasis on fusion blasters in your stealth team, meaning that if you take a fusion collider on your ghostkeel, you probably want to take fusion blasters on your stealth teams as well. But if you don't take a fusion collider on your ghostkeel, then burst cannons are probably still the way to go. So yeah. Crisis battle suits and crisis bodyguards. I already mentioned that crisis bodyguards are now part of the elite section, and you can field either of these in units up to 9, which is pretty awesome. In the past, you could only field them in units, or you could only field crisis battle suits in units of 3, and then in order to get a large unit of bodyguards, you had to take Farsight. Now that that ability is just native to the unit, so you can field really large units of crisis suits if you want to. Doesn't mean you necessarily should, but it is an option, and it's pretty cool, especially considering the new models. But other than, so that's a main difference. Another difference is that they can take the cyclic ion blaster and the airburst fragmentation projector as just normal weapons now. They're no longer experimental. You can take as many of them as you want according to the codex. However, there is a little bit of a cause for pause there, and that is that you cannot twin link either one of them. There's no value, there's no point value in the codex listed for either of those 2 weapons, which made sense in the last codex because you could only have one, and so you could never twin link. But in this codex, that restriction has vanished, and so it's odd that there's not a point value for twin linking them. Basically, it just means now that you can't twin link them, but you can take a bunch of them if you want. Until someone says otherwise, is how I'm going to interpret that. And so that if you want to take either of those weapons on either of these guys, that would be relevant. However, I don't know if you'd want to do that. The thing with either of those weapons in the past was that taking one of them just kind of threw a wrench in the gears of your unit, right? One of the main things with designing effective units is that you want them to have a clear role. You don't want Swiss Army knife units, really. You want like just a big butcher knife unit and then like a little fillet knife unit. You don't want a Swiss Army knife unit. And so throwing those weapons into those, otherwise singularly focused units kind of made things fuzzy. Now you could potentially take an entire unit with cyclic ion blasters, which could be pretty interesting, but maybe not. That's something that I think we need to explore more going forward, is whether or not that could produce some really interesting army lists. But aside from that, that's something that of course you will decide when you make your army list. But as far as changes go, yeah, you can field them up to 9. And Crisis Bodyguards, while they are 10 points more, you get an extra attack in close combat plus an extra leadership point, and they take up a different area of the force organization chart in the Hunter contingent than Crisis Battlesuits. Crisis Battlesuits and the Hunter contingent compete for slots with ghostkeels and riptides and stealth suits, whereas Bodyguards do not. And so particularly for those two reasons, they may be a better option for you depending on your army list. The reason why I say that is because if you are fielding them in a large unit, they are potentially going to be assaulted, and the reason I say that is because they are probably going to be on the board longer, and so assaulting might be more likely. And so having that extra punch might come in handy. And then if you're using the Hunter contingent, you are going to want to be able to take them and not restrict your ability to take other elite choices. So Bodyguards, it's unfortunate that you have to pay extra 10 points for them, but they might be a really good way to get Crisis Suits into your list that is already going to be pretty competitive for elite slot choices. The Ghostkeel, the new kid on the block, a wonderful model, of course, has a bunch of different rules, and I'm going to go more in depth with the Ghostkeel just because it is new in a separate video. But at the force organization chart level, you'll probably want to take one, either as part of that stealth cadre or just on its own. I think they bring some really interesting things to the table and are relatively durable, so you'll probably want to take one. Riptides, nothing has changed. People were really hoping that there might be a D option on that, or that they might be upgraded to gargantuan creatures, but neither of those happened. So the Riptide's the same, and it was a great addition to an army list in the last codex, and it's a great addition to an army list in this codex. So yeah, and that's it for elite choices. So I think probably what you'll want to do, depending on, of course, what type of detachment you're taking, you will want to take a Ghostkeel, a couple Riptides, and then Bodyguards in order to get your Crisis Suits in. That might be an option for you. But something that I didn't mention that I think is actually really important is that monstrous creatures now have the Fire Team special role, and that is something that has changed for the Riptide, is that they have access to the Fire Team special role, which says that if a unit of vehicles or monstrous creatures has at least 3 models in it, that they get to add 1 to their ballistic skill. And so that kind of pushes you towards wanting to group your Riptides together, and I don't think that's a good idea. I think you want to have your guys spread out, especially if you have access to ample marker lights, or if you're using the hunter contingent, you want to spread your guys out. Now, that is part of the reason why Crisis Bodyguards might be a good option, is because you probably still want to spread these guys out. These guys being ghostkeels and riptides, just because then they are even more durable, right? They if you kill one, you're not going to have wounds spill over to another. If one gets caught in close combat, the other ones can run away, things like that. And so I still think you want to keep your riptides separate, even though you can put them together. I think that's an important point to make. And I think that's probably true for ghostkeels too, although maybe not. Now, of course, the downside to that is you're giving up more kill points if they do die, but I think you might be better off anyway. You're going to have more scoring capabilities, and the units that you have might live longer as well. So plus, if you are using the hunter contingent, you're filling up those requisite units to gain the coordinated firepower special rule. So yeah, fire team I think is a cool special rule, but I would not choose to do that unless I really needed to get more riptides into the list and I didn't have any other FOC slots. But that's really not an issue. So I would not use fire team special rules. Yeah, so that's it for the elite units. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and of course, happy wargaming.